Good morning, everyone. So Jeff talked about reading every day, right? How many of you read regularly? One look on the, well. I'm going to recommend a book to you, okay? The book is called Turning Pro by Steven Pressfield. I am a huge Steven Pressfield fan. Steven Pressfield is also the guy who wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance. He also wrote King Kong, the movie, which was his biggest box office success, although not critically acclaimed. But Pressfield is an interesting guy because he floundered for a really, really long time. And he made a decision to turn pro. And you know, when Jason laid out the numbers of, what is it, how many brokerages are here now?
Over 200.
Over 200 brokerages are here. It doesn't mean that they're pros. It just means that there's 200 brokerages here. Well, because Pressfield talks about this. He's like the difference between the amateur and the pro, right? And it's a very interesting book because what I always tell everyone in our industry is that time doesn't cure a real estate salesperson's, well, that's not the right way to say it. Time is not your ally, let's put it that way, as a real estate salesperson. It's a decision that you have to make, right? And most people never make the decision. Most people never make the decision to finally just go get after it and all of those things that it lays out. You know, you watch people who have been doing this for 20, 25 years, they're still not pros, right? They're still incredibly reactive. They still operate completely from fear. And a true professional does not operate from fear. They operate from a very calm state of, I know what I'm doing, this is what I do, this is my model, I trust this, I will continue to do this, and I will do the work, right? And I feel very strongly right now, our industry is continuing to be assailed from all sides. And we have been in a really, really hot market, and we really haven't seen the back end. Most individual agents in the industry have not seen the back end of what's being played, okay? And I'll give you a classic example that my daughter actually sent to me 2 days ago, and it was off of TikTok, which I'm not a TikTok person, but my daughter is. Remember the guy that did the little TikTok video about buying the Apple? Remember that guy? Have you seen his latest TikTok video? This is totally impromptu. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to play this loud enough. What are the chances this is gonna work? Slim and none, and Slim just left town.
We can get it to work.
Well, I'll just tell you what he says. He's like, wouldn't it be weird if you lived in a world where a billion-dollar company would, because of the AI they have and because of all the data that they have and because they know zip codes and they know buying patterns, that they would just go in and just start buying up a lot of $300,000 houses because they have the data and they know that this is the area that people want to move to, and they know because of their data what people are actually willing to pay for those houses. And he said, wouldn't it be weird if they went out and bought, I don't know, say 100 of these houses? And then all of a sudden, after they got 100 of these houses bought up, wouldn't it be weird because they knew what people were really willing to pay for those houses, that all of a sudden the next house they bought, they paid $340,000 for? Oh, and because they have a lot of cash, they paid cash, of course, so there's no appraisal. And then they went in and they fixed it up a little bit, just a little bit, and then they turned around and they put it back on the market for $370,000 after they bought all these houses for $300,000. And then wouldn't it be weird if they went and did it again and they bought another, they paid cash again, and then they started putting all these $300,000 houses on the market for $340,000 because now they don't have to worry about appraisals because they've actually manufactured their own internal sales. He goes, wouldn't that be a weird world to live in? Guys, that's what's going on. And if you don't think that's what's going on, and you may never see it at the lake, honestly, you may never see it here, but trust me, if you're following the industry at all, and I always talk about being a student of the game, right? If you're following this industry at all, institutional buyers are huge. BlackRock is massive. And what it's squeezing out is, and again, second home, lakes, average sales price, what, 330? That's just overall average. Yeah, I mean, Springfield, we're still like 185, 190, but it's squeezing out that lower end buyer, right? And I have a friend in Springfield who owned a tremendous amount of rental property. And because of what he feels like is going to go on with taxes and capital gains and this, that, and the other, he sold out in a big way, like 20 million. He's like, I got 20 million I need to go put somewhere. He sold over 100 rental properties. Never hit the market. He sold it to a syndicate out of Texas, right? So this is the big money that's being played on the industry now. Not to be, Debbie Downer here. So what does that mean? That means for individual people in the field, you got to turn pro. You got to turn pro like you've never turned before, I think, because you don't have AI, right? I mean, you can sit there and you can try to scour the multi-list data and figure it out, and you're like, okay, there seems to be a market here. But have you got $40, $50 million sitting over there where you could go snap up a bunch of these houses? No, I don't think. If you do, you're probably not listening to me. So you have to turn pro at the granular level with your clients. That's the key to this. Because the reason all of this money is being played on our industry is because of the unprofessionalism, the amateurish piece of the real estate sales puzzle. It's not you guys, it's everybody that's not with you. And yet it frames how people look at everything that we do, okay? So today, I think it's all about leverage at this point. And there's things you can do that the big syndicates can't do, but you have to turn pro to be able to do them. You have to really stand behind what you believe to be true. You have to be incredibly proactive. The marketplace nationwide appears to start to be slowing down just a touch, which means, like Jeff and I were talking earlier, it means now you have 3 offers on something rather than 10, right? But if things happen the way they always have in our industry, it is going to sneak up on us like a thief in the night again. And all of a sudden we're going to be going, what happened, right? Because when you only have 3 offers on a listing rather than 10, it feels slower, but it's still crazy good. But when you get back to the normal market where you put something out there for a few, weeks, and all of a sudden you have some traffic, 8 out of 10 showings in the first 2 weeks, and you finally get an offer, now you're going to have sellers looking at you saying, what? Why didn't we get like 15 offers? I mean, what are you doing wrong? Now it's your fault again, real estate agent, right? Or when we can't find buyers' property, which is what we're going to talk about today, we're still massively as an industry just waiting for this multi-list thing, waiting for things to show up instead of turning pro. So go get Pressfield's book, seriously. It's a great book. It's a little dark, I'll just tell you. Pressfield's kind of a dark guy, has some dark things in it, but he lays out, he talks about a guy, I think the guy picked tomatoes. He was a tomato picker. He went and picked tomatoes. He goes, but he was a pro. And Pressfield's attitude is, it doesn't matter what you're doing, be a pro. All right? So we're going to talk specifically, broad brush, we're going to talk about buyer agency, but I want to kind of get into the nits and lice of this thing today with you, if that's okay. How many of you use buyer agencies? Every time? Before they ever get in the car? Okay. If you didn't notice, the hands kept kind of going down, right? Okay. So honestly, this bothers me. We've had buyer agency for 20 years, over 20 years. And we have an industry have never used it. And I would like to ask the question of why. Why don't you have buyers sign buyer agency agreements with you before you work with them? That's not a rhetorical question. I want to hear your answers.
Fear of losing.
Fear of losing?
Losing them.
Fear of losing the buyer.
Most of them are out of town and they won't sign a buyer's agency until they get to know you better.
Most of them will not sign a buyer agency until they get to know you better. Okay? Valid?
Sometimes I'm not comfortable with them. I'm not sure I want to work with them.
Sometimes you're not sure you want to work with them. Perfect. What else? How many of you have been, for lack of a better word, screwed over by a buyer? Right? How many of you put a sign in front of a listing without a listing agreement? Oh, wait, you can't do that. That's illegal. Right? You can't do that because it's illegal. And once you realize that you can't do that because it's illegal, what does that force you to do? That forces you to turn pro as a listing agent. Because you really want to see it rain cats and dogs, just get rid of that rule. Right? So I find it interesting that and this is, pardon me while I go on my rant. I find it interesting that when the industry says you have to do this in order to be able to do that, we all figure out how to do it. We turn pro. And yet the industry doesn't say that you have to get this buyer agency agreement signed before you can work with a buyer. That bothers me. That really bothers me. You got how many agents in the market now? Over 1,000 agents. You put that rule in place, you won't have 1,000 agents in your market anymore. They won't make it. They can't survive. I think everything that y'all said is very valid. I just think if you turn pro on this deal, you can accomplish all those things prior to ever having to show them property. Right? Because in a lot of cases it's, well, I don't know that I want to be around them yet, so let me go show them a few, right? And see if I really want to work with them. And I just want to get all of that on the front end. As you all know about me, I think the biggest fallacy of real estate sales is it's 24/7. I don't think you should lose your life in the pursuit of being a real estate agent. Honestly, to use Pressfield's analogy, I think if you're losing your life as a real estate agent, you're an amateur. Because a real pro doesn't lose their life. A real pro figures out how to put the things in place, practice, work, gets Pressfield's book. It's awesome. Okay, so with that opening, as positive as that seemed to be, maybe that's why you like me, Jason, because I'm not all rainbows and unicorns or whatever. All right, blue ocean strategy for buyer leverage. We talked a little bit about this when I was here last time as just one of the vehicles of how to leverage buyers. I just want to get into the details of it today. Specifically, I'm going to propose to you a buyer agency presentation. And after talking to Tammy earlier, a couple of things you might want to put in your buyer agency agreement that would help you and maybe protect you more, okay? Obviously, my message today is I don't think you should be working with anyone without an agreement. I talked to one of my clients yesterday, actually in Philadelphia, and I said, because last week he couldn't make the call, he said, I'm going into court. I didn't know what he was going into court for. And I asked him yesterday, I said, well, how'd that come out? And he said, well, it got delayed. I go, what is the case? He goes, it's buyer agency. We're suing. We're perfecting a buyer agency agreement. We have it all documented. We had the agreement. We had the conversations with the lady. We followed it up with emails. And she went around and bought a house from somebody else. We're pursuing it. I'm like, good for you, Bob. Because I think there should be more of that. Okay? Not that I'm a suit happy guy, but I think there should be more of that. Okay. So Colin Cowherd said this, become one of my favorite quotes. Most people go through their whole life and never get leverage, and that's really too bad. But what's even worse is when you have leverage and you don't use it. And guys, if there's a company that has leverage, it's you. I mean, what's your market share up here? 30%? For the whole market? What's your market share like at the lake?
Well, I mean, that is a lake.
That-
But that's a big area.
That's a big area? So you're at 30%. Who's second place?
Keller,
What's their market share?
12.
12%? You're 5 percentage points away. I'll just tell you. We always just talk about this at a regional level. When somebody hit 35% market share, it was game over. Nobody's going to catch them till they do something really stupid. Okay? 35% market share was always the ultimate target. And then what I learned from, remember Jeff Hollingsworth? Jeff Cranch, remember Jeff Hollingsworth down at Hot Springs Village? He called me one day and he goes, hey, just so you know, I've done the math. It will cost me more now to get another 1% of market share than I will actually make. So I think I figured out that when you get to 52% market share, it's cost prohibitive for you to go get more. I'm like, okay, dude. He goes, so don't get on me about how I don't have more agents or something, because he goes, it's going to cost me more to get those people than what I actually have, right? That's a gauntlet. That's being a pro. And it's interesting because Jeff came out of not the real estate industry at all. I mean, he had not been a realtor. He had built companies for other people. And finally, he's like, I'm going to go build a company for myself. So he did. He built this massive company, sold it off. And if you ever see pictures of him on Facebook now, he and his wife ride this tandem 87 speed bicycle like all over the world. They're always posting pictures of, he sold his company, and that's what pros get to do, right? They get to sell their company. Amateurs never get to do that. So anyway, read Pressfield's book. Okay. Today's playing field. Because of the massive amount of information, number one, y'all are interchangeable pieces, aren't you? Absolutely interchangeable pieces. They've already got the information. I had a presentation I wrote in 2005. I called it 2005 and Beyond. And I could pull it up. 16 years ago, I said, here's where I see this thing heading. The internet's going to change this business. The internet is going to do to the industry ultimately what it won't do for itself, and that's raise professionalism. Because the value is not information anymore. The value is interpretation of information people already have. Your value is having strategies for people above and beyond what they can do on their own, right? We've seen this on the seller side for the last year or so, right? We've seen agents putting out on Facebook all the time, 17 offers in 4 hours. Well, that just tells me I don't need you. If you can get 17 in 4, I can probably get 6 in a day and save dollars. Then you see the the ideal agent ads on TV. We've talked about that before. Their whole pitch is, call us, we'll get you an agent cheaper, right? And in 2005, I made this prediction. I said there'll be 2 kinds of companies coming out of this. There'll be great companies and there'll be cheap companies. And I always talk about pros, tweeners, and rookies, right? So the true pro knows exactly what they're doing. They have a business model. They're working in it. The tweeners are caught in the middle. They're doing a lot of things. They're making really good money. But a lot of the things they're doing really aren't helping them at all. They're caught between, they're like semi-pro, if you will. I guess I'm going to have a Pressfield day. And what I said in 2005 was by the time the tweeners figure out what's going on, there's only going to be 2 kinds of companies. There's going to be great companies and cheap companies. And by the time the tweeners figure out what's going on, because as an industry, we just don't figure stuff out. We get it slapped on us and we go, oh no, now what do we do? I said, because of that, tweeners won't have an option. They won't have time to go get great. So what will they do? They'll go cheap. And we're starting to see that in the industry, aren't we? We're starting to see more and more discount companies. More and more discount companies on the listing side, on the buyer side, more and more discount brokerages, right? Because they're not willing to constantly make those decisions to turn pro. I mean, look guys, this is one reason all my clients are RE/MAX people, because you're the only guys that have the ability to turn pro. We have the only model actually that's based on being professional real estate agents that know what they're doing. Every other model that's out there is based on bring me your huddled masses and you'll know 1 or 2 people a year. and I'll take half the money. Selling real estate is 100% a battle of processes. And if you don't have a process that you take people through every single solitary time, regardless of where the lead came from, you will find yourself endlessly in other people's processes. And it's exhausting because you don't know the rules. Okay? Now part of why I love this is I'm a golfer. And golf is all about staying in the process, right? But you have to have processes for everything you do. Today specifically, we're going to talk about a buyer agency process. The traditional methods of working with buyers revolve around always have and always will. Reaction to the decision of someone else. It's the number one rule of working with a buyer. There's a time component to working with buyers, and in today's environment, a whole heck of a lot of stress. This is the only market I've ever seen where everybody is stressed out. Buyers, sellers, buyer's agents, listing agents, lenders, inspectors. Society, we are reacting to every little subtle nuance of what goes on and running around making speeches to each other about it. I was in Detroit in the night that Trump was elected, and I was in a hotel in Detroit. I had to speak the next day, and I almost saw like 3 fistfights in the hotel bar. 'Cause we were all in the hotel bar watching this thing, you know. Regardless of your political leanings, we were all watching CNN, and Wolf Blitzer kept coming on and going, Trump wins Ohio, Trump wins Florida. And you can just kind of feel the energy in the room, and there's one guy in the back of the bar sitting at a table by himself, and every time Wolf Blitzer comes on, he goes, here we go, Trump, here we go. And he hit, 3 people went back and got ready to beat him up. And he just left. Finally, I was like, I'm out. I'm going to bed. I get up the next morning. I go to we're having this big meeting. There's like 500 people there. And as they're walking in, I'm standing in front, and I'm like, oh no. I can just tell by the look on your face who you voted for, right? Because I'm watching everybody, and I'm like, this isn't going to be good. And I got to say something. And so I said, hey, just before we start, we had an election yesterday. And I can tell by the look on your face who you voted for. And I said, all I'm going to tell you is this. If who sits in that office defines what you're able to do, you're screwed anyway. Because that just means you're reacting to everything that goes on, right? I was talking to an appraisal buddy of mine. We had dinner Thursday night. I'm like, business still good? He goes, man, I'm swamped. He goes, I'm absolutely swamped. And he goes, I've just disconnected from everything now. I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I kind of got into the whole political thing and watching what was going on and started worrying about stuff. And he said, then I realized that, whether I liked the direction that the overall country was going politically or not. And he said, I started thinking back to various administrations. He goes, I did fine. He goes, honestly, in 2008, when everything went, I did fine. It was just all REO business, right? He goes, I've just decided that it's up to me whether I do fine or not. Well, that's the mark of a pro, isn't it? That's the mark of a pro. And I'll just say, as an industry, we don't do that. Y'all do. But you're dealing with a lot of people on the backside that don't do that, aren't you? You're dealing with a lot of members of the public now that don't do that. We don't read nearly as much as we used to. We certainly scroll our phones a lot. We look at Instagram a lot and all that stuff. Pressfield makes comments about that, by the way, in his book. Exposure happens at the extremes of any market. We have been at an extreme now for a couple of years. We've been on a massively ramping up market for 8 years, and the marketplace is getting exposed. And what I mean by that is agents are just getting exposed. We're getting exposed to our lack of processes. We tend to work really well as an industry in the middle ground when you can't really hold us accountable to anything. The one thing I'm sure you guys have discovered in the last few months, maybe last year, that freaking contract matters now, doesn't it? What's written in that contract matters. I have a lot of clients, broker clients, that are like, I don't get it. All my seasoned veterans are calling me with inane questions they should know the answer to. I don't understand why they're doing this. I'm like, well, this is real simple. This time, if you screw this up, it's going to be bad. Before, we always used to, we'd gotten to the point prior to this run-up we've been on, I used to say, look, man, it's like shaking hands over the hood of a car. I'll kind of do this. Okay, well, that sounds good. I'll kind of do this. We'll work the rest of it out. I'll see you around the end of next month. And it's not that way anymore, is it? Guy, sounds so negative. And yes, there's so much opportunity in the middle of all this. The current market has exposed the industry's lack of a process in working with buyers. It's exposed our lack of processes in working with sellers too, right? One of the things that I've seen happening is people are saying, well, now we're starting to see price reductions. That must mean the marketplace is slowing down. And I'm like, or it means people quit running CMAs. And we went to that age-old listing presentation dialogue, which was, so, what do you think? Well, I think my house is worth X. You know what? Let's start there and see what happens. That's been the age-old dialogue. I used that when I was a suffering realtor back in the day. It's been the age-old dialogue forever, but this market had so much frickin' steam to it, you could do that and get away with it. So just because you're seeing price reductions does not mean the marketplace is slowing down. It means that agents stopped being pros. And I think if you're a true pro every day, you're a pro. You have a process, you have a way that you go through things. People either like it or they don't, and you're okay with that because you know statistically most people enjoy it. They enjoy the process that you take them through. People refer processes, don't they? They do not refer people. So if you don't have processes in place every day, you will never build a massive referral business because I don't know what to expect from you. Because you're different every time depending on who you're dealing with. There was actually sales training out there about that at one point. Like just be a chameleon, just mirror who they are. It's exhausting. Just be who you are. Be blunt. If you're blunt, blunt people will love you. You just got to go find more blunt people, right? I mean, because it's, your bluntness will then lead to the process, and if I'm wired like you know what, I want to deal with you. Because ultimately we end up dealing with people that we like to be around. We're living the most stressful time in real estate. Some would argue more stressful than 2008 to 11. I would argue that it is. It's stressful for everybody at this point. There were market segments that were stressful before, but now it's everybody. Marketplace has really been too good, hasn't it? It's been too good. I mean, we made a lot of money. And yet, I was just talking to one of my clients yesterday about this. There's a lot of seasoned veterans that have been going through the hottest real estate market ever going, what in the world is going on? My business is down. My business is way off, and I don't understand why. I 100% know why. And it's lack of a past client system. Because you don't have AI and you don't have millions of dollars to go out and buy a bunch of houses, you better have a great past client system. It's the one thing AI can't do, right? It's the one thing the internet can't do. The internet cannot build and rebuild personal relationships with people. And that's something that you have to do if you want to protect your business. Listing agents are losing the national organic leverage point of listings. I simply mean by that things sell too quickly and you don't get the bounce off of your listings. While buyer agents are seeing their value absolutely stripped away. Because for most buyer agents, ultimately we had a lockbox key. I can get you in. But I don't have a lot of strategies in negotiation. We've had to invent strategies on the fly in this market. And I will tell you that the rules, if you could keep the mindset of what you've had to do in this market and maintain that mindset throughout the rest of your career, oh, you're a pro. You're 100% a pro. Don't let the marketplace dictate your business. Because the marketplace is irrelevant. Just as whoever the president is irrelevant, or what the tax rate goes to is irrelevant. You'll just figure it out, right? It's the mark of talented people. Talented people figure crap out. Throw at me whatever, we'll come, okay, well, that means I got to go over here. What are the rules of going over here? It's this, that, and the other, right? That's what a pro does. Buyers and agents are stressed over constant bidding wars and having to make a decision on the fly. Buyers don't like having to make a decision on the fly. It is the number one, the most emotional thing that people will do is buy a property. They don't like to have to be pressured. You know, the old model was, hey, there's a new house that came up today. Okay, well, give us the address. We'll drive by. You know, the kids have got some ball games this weekend. How about, like, are you open Monday? Maybe we could go look at it on Monday. That's the normal market movement with a buyer, right? Enough inventory, middle ground, we're all good. Now it's like, hey, there's a new listing today. Oh, well, never mind, it's gone. Right? Which is why you only need to be working with people that really have that need to do something. Because if you don't have a need to do it, you ain't gonna do it. Seeing multiple offers in hours. Buyers are missing out on multiple properties because they can't or won't pay enough. That seems to be starting to, are you seeing that that's starting to level out a little bit now? That people perhaps that couldn't have purchased before maybe can, given that you have the right strategies for it. This is a big one. Sellers are afraid to put their house on the market because they can't find anything, right? I know you all have a lot of those people, right? Like, I would sell, but where would I go? Try to give you some kind of a strategy to help you with that. 3 questions we got to answer. Number 1, how in the world did we get here in this overstressed market? Number 2, is it possible that we helped to create it? And number 3, did our traditional way of business finally getting exposed? And I think the answer is yes. I think the traditional realtor model has finally gotten exposed. I think the internet has done it to us. And I think if you couple the internet with an overheated market, with a massive drop in interest rates, and throw a pandemic in there, we got exposed. And what I would tell you is you're going to see more and more of this. You're going to see more and more discounting going on. You're going to see more and more money spent at our industry. I would say within the next, probably by the end of the year, we will probably be the next mesothelioma on late night TV. You're going to start seeing ads. Did you buy a house without an inspection? Did you pay more than asking price? Call 1-800, let's sue them. I'm telling you, I think it's coming. Trust me, these cats, they don't miss a crisis. They don't. If you've ever dealt with some of these guys, we had a discrimination lawsuit a couple of years ago, and it was the biggest setup deal I've ever seen in my life. And they knew 100% the rules, and this guy's a pro. I mean, he really is a pro. By the way, just FYI, I may have told you guys this before. I don't know. Have I told you about the discrimination deal we got into in Springfield a couple of years ago? Here's a little trivia question for you. Can you record a phone call you're having with somebody and not tell them? How many people think you can? You don't need to tell anybody anything. You can just record all the conversations you have. Depending on the state. Well, let's just deal with the state of Missouri. Do you believe that you can record a phone conversation you're having and never tell the other party that you're recording it? How many people think you can do that in Missouri? Put your freaking hands up, because you can. You can record any conversation that you're a party to. Okay? So a good buddy of mine that's an attorney in Springfield always used to say, never put in writing what you can say to somebody. Now the rule is just be very careful what you say to everybody and always assume you're being recorded. Because that's exactly what happened to this agent in Springfield. Number 1, she got out of her lane. She was trying to help a friend lease one of his rental houses. She's not in property management. She's just trying to help out a buddy. No fee, just helping out a buddy. And she took a phone call from someone. They were all on disability. and they wanted to rent this property. And they sent in their information, and the combination of their income did not hit the threshold for this particular landlord. They did not have 3 times, his threshold was 3 times the monthly rent in income. It didn't hit it. She got a call back, and the lady said, where are we with this? And the agent, busy in between appointments, driving down the road, said, well, we put it into the computer and it didn't, the income didn't fit. And the lady said, so we're being turned down because we're on disability. She said, no, you're being turned down because you didn't have the income that's required with this particular tenant. Okay, so it sounds like we're getting turned down because we're on disability. Bam, gets slapped with a lawsuit. They'd never seen the property, by the way. Gets slapped with a lawsuit, and what went wrong was the agent, they'd never run it through any computer system. There was no record that you ran it through the computer system. The agent looked at it and said, well, this isn't going anywhere. But she was on tape saying she had run it through the computer system because she was in between appointments and thought that would sound better than me just going, I just decided that you don't make enough money. We go into depositions, come to find out these people have done this 3 different times with 3 different people that I knew. They are all on disability, a mom and 2 kids. The 2 kids have no idea what their disability actually is. They said, that's not how this works. You just tell them I need to be on disability. I said, and the attorney's like, well, what did you claim? Social anxiety and PTSD. Well, which one are you being paid on? Oh, we don't know. What did you do before this? They asked the son. Well, what do you mean? I've been on disability since high school. He was 32 years old. Daughter, same way. Mom, same way. We're in the mediation. We go to mediation. We go back and forth. The attorney who I knew was representing them said, and this is when I had a piece of ownership at House of Brokers, he said, you can tell my friend in the other room that this will be a lot better to settle this today than it will be for this to show up in the newspaper tomorrow. Mediator comes back in. If you've never been in one of these things, they're special. Mediator comes back in. He said, I was told to tell you, he looks at me, and to tell you that it would be easier to settle this today than have it show up in the paper. And I said, well, you can go tell him that he can go himself. And our attorney goes, we're not going to say that, Wayne. I'm like, okay. And another little factoid about the state of Missouri. God, I'm so negative today, and I'm so sorry. This is why you like me, right, Jason? He goes, here's the deal. We're going to settle this. He said, the insurance company will settle this. We can settle it for $35,000. Because the attorney very eloquently said, here's the deal. If we go to trial, the other attorney, he said, if we go to trial, see ya. He's already said, I did the math. He's already said how many hours he will make sure that he bills. And his bill will be about $65,000 for this. And he said, in the state of Missouri, all he has to do in a jury trial is get $1. And he will get all of his attorney's fees paid. He said, so he will stand in front of a jury and go, just give him $1. I mean, even if you're not sure, just give him $1, just as a token. And he said, it's all about him getting his fees. So, I don't know why I went down that path, but most of the time, if you've been around me long enough to know, I go down paths that I never know I'm going to go down. How did I get there? Something about processes, probably. Well, she got out of her process. We had rules like you don't do property management. Well, I was just trying to help out a friend. Well, there you go. So I think you're going to see way more of that. I think you're going to see a lot more lawsuits. I think these guys are getting ready for it. Just be a pro. Document everything. Make sure that you have some kind of text message or email or something string on what you told people. If you're not already, and I'm sure you guys are, but if you're not already having people sign a waiver on not doing their property inspections, you better start, because they'll immediately just come after you guys. And they're going to come after you because we have E&O. And all that's going to do, the E&O companies will always pay because they don't want to go to trial, especially in Missouri because they only got to ask for $1. And then it's going to make the E&O premiums go up and all that stuff. So here we go. This is going to be the backside of this great market that we've been in. Okay? All right. Back to being positive. Are you prepared to look at your process in a different way? I mean, once and for all, just determine on the front end with people whether you want to work with them or not, rather than having to work with them for a while and then go, oh, I really don't like working with these people. And looking at the phone and going, oh, it's them. Again, I don't want to talk to them. My contention always for the last 20 odd years has been you don't have to do that, but you have to get the presentation skills down. If you call me about wanting to hire me, we're going to go through a process. You may not know it's a process, but it's a process. And I will say exactly the same things every time. We'll have a 30-minute phone call to start, and at about 20 minutes, after I've asked you questions about your business and figured it out, I will then introduce what my fee is, and we will either have a 21-minute conversation or we will continue on, one of the two. And I'm okay either way, honestly. And I think I want you to have that same kind of confidence, because I know you have it on the listing side, and I know when we can do something in one endeavor, we can turn it right around and do it over here. It's the same set of rules. Are you prepared to change the buyer process to bring real value to the consumer? And that's really the issue, right? The real issue, the reason people don't want to sign these is they don't see commensurate value with signing this. Now, part of that is because nobody else has ever made me sign one of these. I can go look at property with somebody else without signing one of those. You're 100% right, you can. I can list my house with somebody else at 4.5% and get them into multi-list. You're exactly right, you can. But in that scenario, what do we always say? But let me show you what I do differently than what those people do. Right? Now I got to bridge that gap between 4.5 and 7, or 5 and 7, or whatever that number is. But let me show you what I do that they don't do. Let me show you why there's value there. And yet we're challenged to do that on the buy side. And that means that buyers don't become a leverage point for us, they become a time suck for us in a lot of cases. Famous book, not really famous to me, Blue Ocean Strategy, right? I've told you about this book before. Real estate's reached a point where you got to have a blue ocean strategy. You got to have a blue ocean strategy, I believe, in almost every aspect of your business. We've always known that in real estate, if you saw all the agents going one way, just go the other way. Whether it was marketing, whether it was processes, just because you don't want to be painted with the realtor brush, because it's not a pretty color, right? So wherever you see everybody marketing, stay away from there. I learned this in Springfield. Patrick Murney, huge competitor, great guy, dominated the Sunday paper because his company had a $1 million contract with the news leader. They still run in Springfield. Murney's the only one left. They still run these huge ads, but he dominated the Murney ad. And I had read enough marketing books to know that if I went and played in that arena, I would simply be validating the vehicle, the marketing vehicle, and he was going to kill me. He had 3 pages. On our contract, it would have cost me tons. I'm like, I can't even be in there. So I got to figure out how to explain to people why I'm not in there and why that should be important to you as a consumer. You got to do the same things with what you're doing, with what your marketing is. You've got to be able to tell me why your marketing or your process or your strategies are better than the person who will just take you out and run you around town in their car. And I'll be honest with you, if you can't do that, then what's the only other way agents go? They go cheap. right? Well, sign a buyer agency with me and I'll work for 1% and I'll rebate you the money or whatever. This is what's, guys, we're here. I've been preaching this sermon for 15 years. We're here. Our industry is finally being disrupted like everybody else's has been disrupted. Law went through it, right? With LegalZoom and all these deals. The travel industry went through it. Stockbrokers went through it. Insurance went through it. Everybody's gone through it. And somehow, and I don't know how we did it, we stayed insulated from it. But we are here. And it didn't happen overnight. 15 years worth of us being asleep at the wheel as an industry. We are a very strong trade group, but we're the most disconnected trade group ever. And then when we try to get together, DOJ files a lawsuit on us, right? Collusion all of a sudden. Everybody's trying to get after the realtor deal. Okay. Market universe is comprised of two oceans, a red ocean and a blue ocean. Every market for anything is two oceans. It's a red ocean and a blue ocean. Red oceans are the traditional way, the traditional market space for us. That's our MLS system. That's the red ocean. Now, the red ocean in the book, The Blue Ocean, they talk about red and blue oceans, and they simply say this, that a red ocean is red only because it's full of blood. Because everybody's fighting for the same market share. In the same way, it's like, oh, there's the market, and they go in there and start biting each other, and the water gets bloody. The premise of the book is if you would just go, oh, look over here, there's a blue ocean. There ain't anybody in that ocean. I'm going to go over there. Let those guys fight that out. I'm going over here. Right? I told you about my friend Ken Rutherford, who is the world's expert on landmines. I think I told you about him last time I was here, because he lost both of his legs to landmines. And we're sitting having drinks, and he's telling me about, he goes, you know where people screw this up, Wayne? I'm like, no, Ken, school me. He goes, they start wide, and they think when they get successful, they'll narrow back down to what they really want to do. And the reality is, you got to start right here, and then maybe it goes this way, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe you just get so into what you're doing, right? My son's a musician, and we were talking the other day about being an artist. And I'm like, you know what, if you think about it, we're all artists. This is what Pressfield talks a lot about. We're all artists, right? We all have that inner thing inside of us that we really want to go do, right? Pressfield calls it your shadow self, the person that you are compared to the person that's in there, what the things you really want to go do. And then I told you about Simon Sinek's book that he wrote, Together is Better, and there's that line in there, why are you doing, if you're not planning on doing this the rest of your life, why are you doing it today? And it's the common theme of these people that write frickin' books, right, that we don't read anymore. But there is that inner drive, right, that thing that I want to go do. It's the blue ocean. We could all live in our own little weird blue ocean, where you know all the rules of your ocean. You know all the fish by name. Right? Nobody gets in your little blue ocean. It's your gig. Come into my ocean. See if you'd like my ocean. And if you don't, that's cool. Go out there and get bloody with everybody else. But this is my ocean. It's my rules, my box. You want to play my game? You'll enjoy it. Right? Same thing you do in a listing presentation, isn't it? It's exactly the same thing. You got one side of your business that's just humming. The listing presentation side, you're crushing it. And then we take that same person, we go over here to buyers, and it's like, oh, I don't know, I might lose them. My dad learned a lot of stuff from my dad. My dad taught me some huge lessons. One of them was, you got to be as good a loser as a winner, because not all this shit's going to work. My dad was a serial entrepreneur. And the second thing was, you can't lose what you didn't have. You can't lose what you don't have. You never had it, so you can't lose it. And that's huge. You can't lose a buyer you never had. Move on. Go find you somebody else. Blue oceans are the unknown, untapped market space, properties that will be listed but aren't yet. They're out there. told you this, I know, last time I was here because I learned it from Nick Bailey when we were doing the Coach's Corner. 70-ish% of sellers, or homeowners, are contemplating putting their homes on the market. They're trying to time the market. They've already missed it, right? They've already missed the peak of the market. It's like owning a stock. When it continues to go up in value, you don't sell, you hold. As soon as it ticks off the high, you're like, you know what, huge profit, let's go. Let's go ahead and do this. That's what's going on in the marketplace right now. When rates start back up, you're going to see this fervent market for a while. Buyers are going to jump back in and go, crap, I missed the 2.75, whatever the rates are, but you know what, 3.25 is still damn good, and I need to go ahead and do this. And then you're going to have sellers go, oh, rates are up, that means the market's going to slow down. We've been thinking about this. Biggest investment most Americans ever have is their home. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to maximize it. Better get that house on the market. Come on, let's do this. In the middle of all that, instead of reacting, waiting for interest rates to go up, which is what realtors are going to do, understanding that that's the dynamic of this, create a blue ocean. Reliance on MLS has created a red one. We've always relied on MLS. I was in, where was I? Oh, I was in Lawton, Oklahoma, and I was talking about this a couple weeks ago. And a guy came up to me afterwards and he goes, I just didn't know what to call it. I go, what do you mean? He said, I had a buyer last week that forced me into the blue ocean. I just didn't know it had a name. I go, well, I don't know if it really does. I named it that. I said, what happened? He said, I had a buyer call me and said, I need a house in this area. And I said, well, there aren't any houses on the market in that area. And she goes, and I don't care. I need a house in that area. I need a house in that school system because I want my kids to go to that school. And he said, but you don't understand. There aren't any houses. And she said, am I not being clear enough? You better go find me one, or I'm going to go find me somebody that will. He goes, oh, that's a blue ocean, isn't it? And I go, yeah, dude. And I said, what we know is statistically there are people sitting there going, I don't know, maybe we ought to do this, maybe we shouldn't. And if you reach out to them and you can prove to them we actually have a real buyer, now perhaps, statistically, yeah, they will, because they are, they'll say, yeah, come out and take a look, see if it's a fit. While technology has massively changed the information flow, the underlying methodologies and the way we do this has not changed. The traditional way to do it, step one, you ask a few cursory questions of the buyer on their physical requirements for a house at an open house. You ask them to sign a sign-in sheet. Go sign in the kitchen, please. I have to have a record for my sellers. Do y'all still use those sign-in sheets? Do you still try that? Anybody? Yeah, no. People never did like that, by the way. Consumers never liked sign-in sheets. They always hated them. They always wrote down fake names. So we got really witty back in the day, so we wrote down a fake name first, right? Remember that? Try to grease the rails with a fake name there at the top. Maybe that'd make people sign in. It's a bunch of smoke and mirrors. And it's a few cursory questions to lead us to step two, which is, well, let me put you on a search. Give me your email address and let me put you on a search. That is what the consumer is hearing from, and if you don't believe me, take a trip outside of the lake on a Sunday, come to Springfield, and just go to open houses and just watch that we're still doing this exactly the same way we did it in 1985 when I got in the real estate business. Let me put you on a drip campaign because that's going to be better than Zillow. That's the line we use. It's better than Zillow. It's real time. It's real time. You put them on a drip campaign of the new listings. And the only real change because of Facebook is you go into your private realtor Facebook groups and you start posting things. I have a buyer who wants a view of Table Rock. 2 or 3 Majestic or Emerald under 300. Buyer need 5-bedroom, 2 to 3 bath. Sawyer Creek or Leebrook up to 315. Looking for a home up to 550 in Glendale. They really like Oak Knoll and Emerald Park. And I'm watching this stuff because I'm members of these groups too. And I'm like, why don't you just go find them the damn house? You know what they want. Why do we this cooperate? It's politically incorrect. This cooperation crap with realtors, get over it. I mean, I admit, you put a house in multi-list, 80% of the time there's going to be another agent involved. That's awesome, but that doesn't mean that's the only way we can do this. And I was watching this, and I'm like, well, that's just weird. And this guy in Lawton 2 weeks ago was doing this. Step 5, we wait. We of course, tag ourselves to that same drip campaign so we know when those new houses show up for them, right? And we hope and pray that when we call them, they haven't done something without us. And then when something does come up, we get them in a bidding war with everybody else who's doing the exact same thing, and now you're in the red ocean again. And that's where the stress came from, was because, oh, I've written 8 offers for these people. And then we start getting mad at them because they won't give enough, right? And then they start getting mad at us because you can't get me the house bought. That's a new dynamic if you're working the buyer side, right? It's like, it's your fault I didn't get this house bought. If you're a listing agent, it's always your fault. That was the rule of the game. My house doesn't sell, your fault, Jeff. And I'm going to just go find somebody else with a different marketing plan, right? Because we pitch people so much on the listing side on our marketing plan. Marketing plans don't do spit, do they? Let's be honest, pricing sells houses, doesn't it? Agreed? Agreed? Price, location, biggest lie in real estate. Price, and price. I can sell a frickin' sinkhole if you let me price it. Rather than waiting for something to come on the market, doesn't it make sense to have a strategy for providing the buyer with an experience they've always wanted and haven't been able to find, i.e. the lady in Lawton, Oklahoma, you're not listening. I don't care that there's not any houses. Go find me one, please. Can we create a blue ocean? 100% we can. An outstanding customer experience for the buyer while also leveraging the relationship for more business. But you got to turn pro to be able to do it. Effectively working with buyers in today's market requires new approaches. Perhaps it always did. I said this earlier. We work with buyers regularly without an agreement. And we get an agreement, but we get an agreement right when they're getting ready to write an offer, don't we? And we don't really explain it to them all that well, do we? Or do we? Do you explain it to them well enough and have enough agreement that if they violated the agreement, that you're willing to go to court? Because you're not afraid of them sitting on the what do they call those things? The witness stand, the stand. You're not afraid of them going, well, they didn't explain it to me. I didn't know that's what it meant. See, I think that's why we don't pursue buyer agency agreements. Because we're not explaining them to people. We don't tell them all the rules and the ramifications of it. And the reason we don't is because we haven't layered in the value of signing that agreement above and beyond what you're going to get if you don't sign the agreement. And the cycle plays on and has for 20 plus years. It's time for you guys to raise the bar because the industry ain't going to do it. The industry's not going to do this. Like I said, you got 200 offices. They're not pros. You guys are pros. And this creates the blue ocean. So what's it look like? Materials and processes, right? Just massive materials and processes that separate you from your competition, delivering them to your clients at first contact. The societal shift that's happened, let's keep driving this point home to everybody, is if you don't knock my socks off the first time I meet you, I will move on to the next person. I will 100% move on to the next person. How many of you have a Zillow play at all? Anybody? A little bit, a little teeny? Okay. I will say this about Zillow. And is Zillow not strong at the lake? Give me feedback. Okay. Is it not where people start? It is where they start. Okay. And so there's somebody buying leads from Zillow in the market at a relatively high number, I would assume. I mean, I got a client in New Jersey spending $250,000 a year. $250,000 a year on Zillow. I got a client in New Jersey. She spends $250,000 a year on Zillow. Yes, she is. I know, it's crazy, right? It's like, why in the world would you spend $250,000 on Zillow? Well, her buyer agents are on 50-50 splits, and they generated a little over $1 million in commissions. So just by being willing to write the check, she's making $250,000 net. That's why she does it. But what we've had to work on is how they convert the leads, right? And a lot of this is crawling inside the consumer's mind to me and understanding what the consumer goes through. And I think once you realize what the consumer is going through, that what we're dragging them through as an industry, it makes it really easy for you to put some things in place to totally separate yourself and differentiate yourself at first contact. Most of the conversations the consumer is having with any kind of an online lead, the conversations just suck, I'll just tell you. One of the things that we've learned, believe it or not, and I don't know where this came from, but in almost every case when I listen to these calls, the agent starts with, if we're lucky, they actually start with their name as opposed to just saying hello, but they start with their name, and then for some reason, the dialogue is, how are you today? Like, hi, this is Wayne Fredrick with RE/MAX, how are you today? And then the consumer goes, I'm fine, how are you? Oh, I'm really good. Long, awkward silence. Where do we go from here? Right? Believe it or not, we've been able to raise conversion rates by getting rid of how are you today. And this is so stupid, but it's kind of where this thing is. And yeah, exactly. And go to, hi, this is Wayne Fredrick with RE/MAX, how can I help you? And all of a sudden the conversation has a flow to it. The other two big things, one of them is just a huge deal for me. Don't ever, I've told you this before, don't ever ask people if they're pre-approved, because people that have cash, you'll make them mad. And the other thing is, you do need to find out if they're working with someone, but don't make it like your second question. That's the other time when we've listened to these conversations just fall off the edge of the table. People lead with, how are you today? I'm fine, how are you? I'm good. Are you working with anybody? I mean, after what do you want to know about the house? Well, I want to know this, that, and the other. Okay, are you working with anybody? And the error goes right out of the conversation again. Okay? There's a cadence to these things, if you will. So are you using introductory videos? I know I talked about this last time I was here. How many people pulled the trigger on introductory videos? Okay. How about buyer packets? Did anybody create a buyer packet? Okay. Awesome. Initial buyer consultations that lead to an agreement. I already asked you that question a different way, so we know that's really not going on. I'm going to try to show you the format for it. How about not working with a buyer without an agreement? Anybody willing to do that? That you don't work with a buyer without an agreement?
Do you mean a written agreement or verbal?
No, a written agreement. Verbal agreements don't mean spit. Written agreement.
Depends if you trust your client.
Depends on what?
Do you trust your client or not?
Yeah, I guess. But if they trust you, why would you not sign one? In fact, Tammy and I were talking about this earlier. I'll lay it out this way. If you're really sincere and you're going to buy, why wouldn't you write me a check up front for $1,000 that's fully credited to you when you buy? But that way, if you don't buy, At least pay a little something for the effort. Anybody willing to do that? It's a great idea. Wow, Wayne, that makes a lot of sense. That'd be awesome. Well, it would certainly pull out who was really going to buy from you and who trusted you, wouldn't it? Why would you not do it? You get full credit for it, right? And in order to do that, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to bring real freaking value to the client. And that's all going to start with this first conversation. And that's defining the perfect house for the buyer. Really sitting down and going, if you had a magic wand, what does this house look like? And then you have strategies to find the perfect house. By the way, if you will define for me your perfect house, I got strategies to go find that house for you. But in order for me to utilize my strategies and spend my money to find you your perfect house, I got to have an agreement. Just as in order for me to spend my money to bring in the videographer and the stager and the this and the that on your listing, I got to have an agreement. Well, can't you just stage my house for me first? Can't you just give me your photographer? Can't you just give me their name first? No. That's what you get when you hire me, right? I just want you to have that same mindset on the buyer side. This is what y'all do every day. You generate a lead, right? The biggest issue that we have to be able to do is we have to be able to generate leads. It's actually the easiest thing to do. Lead generation is easy. Lead conversion is not. Lead conversion is where the real work is. Again, I laid this stat out to you last time. In the online world, there'll be about 100 million leads this year. There'll be less than 6 million closed transactions. That tells you that 94% of all online leads are garbage. That is actually the beautiful silver lining of all of this, is because agents start feeling like all of the leads are bad, right? Go back to the classic Glengarry Glen Ross scene. If you have, I think I told you this too, if you haven't ever seen Glengarry Glen Ross, it's worth an afternoon, where Jack Lemmon says the leads are weak. Alec Baldwin says the leads aren't weak, you're weak, right? Mitch and Murray have paid good money for these leads. That's really what's playing out in real estate now, right? So you got lead generation. The piece we're talking about now is differentiation and presentation. The question you always have to be able to answer, either on the listing side or on the buyer side, is why should I hire you? How will my life be better by an affiliation with you? This is the same question we have to answer in the recruiting side. How will my life be better by affiliating with your company? What I tell brokers is you have one chance, one meeting to drive home that point. I would tell you, you have exactly the same thing when you're talking with buyers. You've got one meeting, if you choose to go down this path, to show them how their life will be better and different by affiliating with you. If we do that successfully via our presentation, we will now have an agreement with that person that now I am your person. It is a fiduciary responsibility. I'm going to work with the following strategies to help you find the property that you have defined for me. I'm not just going to toss you into multi-list and wait with you. Just as a listing agent, you don't just put a sign in the yard. What do you do? Well, I'm going to hang a lockbox on your door, I'm going to put a sign in your yard, and I'm going to wait. That's what I do. I wait, right? We're not going to do that. We're going to be proactive, right? We then identify their perfect house. We sign a contract, and I don't mean on their house, I mean with you. And the closing actually happens that we've closed this meeting and now we agree we're going to work together, we trust each other, you are my client, I am your representative, and this is a serious deal that we're going to do, and I'm just proposing y'all walk down this trail. And the reason I'm so into this is because everybody else is trying to tell the consumer that's not important. All the money's being played to continue to make you an interchangeable piece. And that's because they either A, well, not A, there's only one A, because they want a piece of the pie. They want a hunk of the money. And you have to become really, really proficient at this as this thing grinds on. Because trust me, they are trying to make you pointless. Bill Gates wrote about this in the 1980s in a book, that there were 13 things a real estate agent did, and he could do 11 of them more effectively on the internet. He wrote about it in the 80s. And the only two things that he couldn't figure out how to do in the 80s were physically write a contract and show somebody a house, and we have solved both of those. He wrote about it in the 80s. So this has been a long-term play. To me, it is an absolute 100% line in the sand. Are you going to be my trusted advisor? Are you going to be my trusted advisor? And if you are my trusted advisor, there is a fee that is associated with being a trusted advisor. Let's talk about lead generation. The general rule, lead gen's not the issue. So many online leads, right? Third-party portals, and I don't know whether y'all are playing in that arena or not, okay? It is a vibrant playing field, I will just tell you. Open houses, referrals, big deal. The referral piece is massive. Probably the most important piece at this point is the referral piece. I'm in social media. On the referral piece, I'll just ask my standard question I always ask. If I'm one of your past clients, I'm one of your people, how often do I hear from you and in what manner? And raise your hand if I hear from you more than 24 times a year. More than 18 times a year. More than 12 times a year. You better up your game, folks. 12 times a year won't keep your people in today's world. I promise you it won't. They'll default to the internet. And we've seen this happen. I'm watching it happen repeatedly. I'm watching very nice producers who have always generated very nice income for years, having one of the worst years they've had this year, because they're not getting the calls anymore. They're not getting the referrals anymore. And when we dig deeper, we discover it's because they're not staying in front of their people. And in today's environment, the consumer doesn't feel the need to pull them into the transaction. And it's because of some of the strategies I'm going to lay out. We've got a donut going on in our industry right now. The mid-range producer who doesn't have a great past client program, who isn't buying leads like some of the big producers are, who isn't playing in that arena. I've always worked by referral, Wayne. I just always worked by referral. That's going away like a thief in the night. It's being stolen from you. It's being stolen from you because of all the online plays. It's being stolen from you because there are some people out there right now prospecting like they've never prospected before, and they don't feel the need to bring that mid-range producer into the transaction. We're seeing it happen. So I want you to get on that side of the equation. That's kind of the blue ocean, right? Differentiation. I said this earlier. You got to knock my socks off the first time I meet you. How do we do that? That's with the conversation that I have. That's with the materials that you have and you deliver to me. That's with how you follow up. That's do I see on the front end that this is going to be a fabulous experience, right? Like it's like I gave you this. I know I gave you this analogy before. It's like the malls. Malls are gonna die because we got Amazon. It's just freaking easier, right? And I never enjoyed the mall anyway. You don't get to park right by the store you want to be in unless it's one of the anchors, because the doors are always by the anchors. So if you wanted to go to like some other place, you got to park, and then you got to walk. And then if it's raining, you can't really park close. And nobody really liked it anyway. And now you don't have to because you can just go online with everything. And yet, in the middle of all that, boutique stores have had a massive resurgence. If you go, next time you're in Springfield, I guess you guys might go to Springfield every now and again, we got the Battlefield Mall. It's this giant frickin' vacant mall now. And right across the street from the Battlefield Mall is a place called Brentwood Shopping Center that was kind of a dilapidated third-rate shopping center. And Curtis Jared went in and redid it. And you can't find a parking place there any day of the week. And it is all boutique stores. And so why do we enjoy the boutique? Because they know who we are. Because they curate for us, right? You've got to take boutique level service and layer it into your deal. And I know you're doing it. I just want to give you a vehicle to try to do it with everybody and see if they really want boutique level experience or they want to just not have to commit to anybody and do it on their own. And that's cool because there's people out there that want to do it that way. Value is determined by very basic strategies. Be very enthusiastic with everybody you talk to. Every time. Because it doesn't matter what you're going through in your life. It doesn't matter that you just had 4 deals fall out or whatever. You got to be enthusiastic with everybody that you talk to. Okay? Number 2, be prepared. And what I mean by that is every time you have a conversation with someone, you know the dynamics of that conversation and you know where you're going to try to take it. Understand the dynamics of every meeting that you have. Because every meeting that you have every day with every person should be getting you somewhere, or why would you have the meeting? And the biggest thing is internalize your dialogue. It is no different than everybody knows I'm a golfer. It's no different than hitting balls and practicing. Because you don't want to step up on the first tee and be worried about your golf swing. You've already internalized it. You don't have to think that much anymore. Your body just does it, right? Well, that's what dialogue is. And the only way to get there is to practice. And the pro practices. We talked about this last time I was here or the time before. Do you remember how many minutes it was of practice to a minute? It was like 1,186 to 1 or something, right? I mean, it was some crazy number. And I just know as an industry we don't practice. In fact, we don't even have protocols set up when you first start in our industry for you to practice. If the industry would act like other industries, you would join our company, we would pay you some kind of a stipend in the beginning, and we'd just sit your butt in training classes like they do stockbrokers. Oh no, not real estate. Oh, we don't want to do that. You got a license? Go. And good luck, right? Are you armed for success? Every time you're in the field, does your open house look like this? Do you have materials for every possible thing? The mindset that I want you to get, is that every time you get stumped in a presentation, go off by yourself and figure out how you got stumped. Figure out how you got there. Figure out, did you take the conversation there unwittingly? And is there something you could put in place to keep you from getting stumped again? And if so, go create that material. And also realize that are there things that you're talking about regularly with people, but you don't have any documentation that validates what you're talking to people about? Because if so, create something that validates that. If you're bringing it up in your presentations on a regular basis, it's probably a big deal to you and you think people need to understand it. So make sure that you have the documentation in place, right? So in that vein, let me lay out one thing for you in a buyer agency agreement, because I think that's how this ends. Here's what I would suggest that you put in as the fee on a buyer agency agreement. I would say that you put a little asterisk in there. And then you write out or type out or print out or whatever, fee to be that which is offered by the listing company, but under no circumstances shall the fee be less than X. Okay? Just put it in there, in writing. That then forces you to have the conversation about what that actually means. Because so many people are just right. What's the traditional co-broker fee here? 3? Is it 3, 3.5? Is it 3 or 3.5?
Let's go with 3.5.
Let's go 3.5. Okay. All right. So you would put in there fee to be that which is offered by the listing company, but under no circumstances shall the fee be less than 3.5%. And that's going to force you to have that conversation. Well, wait a minute, what's this mean? Well, this means that sometimes people only offer 3%. And so if that's the case, I'll let you know, because our agreement is going to be for 3.5%. What I think it also allows you to do, and I hit on this 20 years ago. My contention is if you have a buyer agency agreement with someone, and the seller, and although we haven't seen sellers do this in a while, but it'll come back, they offer a bonus to the selling agent, right? My contention is you can't charge it. You can't get it. If you wrote in 3.5% and they're paying 3.5% plus $5,000, I don't think you can get it. I don't think you can charge it. Because that's costing your buyer $5,000 more to get the deal done. But if you put to be that which is offered, but under no circumstances less than, now you don't have a problem. You can go get it. That was just, and people were like, oh no, I'm going to take it anyway. I'm like, well, I just don't think that you really are supposed to do that. Right? Just a thought. Things that are big deals to you as we go through this in the agreement, in the presentation, in the way that you're going through this, things that you believe people must understand, make sure that you slow down, right? So there's like key service delivery points in real estate, right? There's times when y'all really make your money. Listing presentations, buyer presentations, writing a contract on behalf of a buyer, presenting a contract to a seller, inspections, right? Those are the 5 times that are the key service delivery points for the client, and that's when you really need to slow down. And you really need to explain everything to them. It's also the 5 points where as an industry we tend to speed up and gloss over because we're getting close to the pay window. And I don't want to say something now that might mess this up because it looks like you're about ready to write an offer. So let's just, and we can probably get through. It'll be okay. We'll negotiate it. We've been thrown into a world where you can't do that because the contract matters now. Okay. Obviously, buyer questionnaires and listing questionnaires. If you don't have them, because it'll help you have more concrete, rote conversations with people. Survey requirements of if you're working with the buy side, you could use this form and just say, let's just use this to help us get clear on exactly what that perfect house is for you, right? Just material, the conversation you're trying to have anyway, just come up with some kind of material that validates this conversation that we're doing. And then lastly, a client survey. Do you guys have all of your clients fill out a client survey and keep it updated so you have this vibrant information on your clients so that you can maybe upgrade those number of touch points that you have to them? So you're not just feel like, well, just send them another email, just blast that email out to everybody. It needs to be birthday cards. If they've got kids living at home, send them, you got an Andy's up here, send them an Andy's frozen custard on their birthdays. You'll get these handwritten notes from their kids, right? Because at the end of the day, for all the money being spent, as of right now, real estate sales is still a relational business. And it always has been. The problem is it's hard to scale a relational business, and I think that's why you're seeing all this money being played, is they're trying to figure out a way to scale this thing. Your success in lead conversion depends on 3 things: your dialogue, your confidence, and your passion. Confidence comes from one thing, and that's internalized dialogue. When you have internalized dialogue, you now do not have to worry about what you're going to say. Right? You answer the phone exactly the same way every time. You greet everybody exactly the same way in an open house because you have practiced it. It is basics, right? It is absolutely 100% the basics. And we don't want to do the basics because they're not sexy. They're not cool. It's not the greatest, latest AdWorks Facebook play or whatever. And yet, when I watched the Home Run Derby this year, because I was in Denver and it was on TV, but the one thing I took from it was I noticed that before these guys went into the Home Run Derby, the night before the All-Star game, what did they go do, if you watched it, before they got in the batter's box? Where were they spending their time? Did anybody see this, or have I told you about this? So here are the highest paid athletes, the best of the best when it comes to hitting balls over a fence. And what did they all do before, like 10, 15 minutes before they went in to perform on the field? They were back in a tunnel hitting balls off a tee. Every stinking one of them. A coach would sit there and put the ball on the tee, and he'd hit it off the tee, he'd hit it off the tee, he'd hit it off the tee. That's about as basic as it gets. That's T-ball. And yet here they are making millions upon millions upon millions, the elite of the elite, and what do they go back to build their confidence before they go out of the playing field? They hit a ball off a frickin' tee. There's a lesson in there somewhere for us. All they're trying to do is internalize their swing. You mentioned reading about Ted Williams, right? I'm fascinated with Ted Williams. Last guy to hit over 400 in baseball. Fantastic eyesight, but more importantly, never swung at a pitch he knew he couldn't hit. He had this little zone, and if the ball was there, he'd hit it. He'd swing at it. And if it wasn't there, he wouldn't swing. The basics. So internalized dialogue, what does that do? That gives you confidence. I learned this with expired listings. That was how I kind of changed my career. That's how I changed my career. I had the dialogue down to calling expireds. I got up, and the more I did it, the more confident I got with it, and the more confident I got, the more it worked, and the more it worked, the more confident I got, and so therefore the more I did it, and you get on this flywheely kind of thing, right? But it all goes back to internalized dialogue. So when you have internalized dialogue, you have confidence. The only reason we're not getting buyer agencies signed, the only reason we're not creating a blue ocean is we don't have our dialogue down. We don't have our dialogue down with buyers on why you should sign this agreement with me today. And along the way, Ebby, we're going to learn whether we want to work with these people or not with some of the questions that we're going to ask them. Once you have confidence, you have a passion. And that passion would simply say, in this scenario, I will not work with anyone without that agreement. And I'm very passionate about that, but I can show you the great value. When you have passion, you'll have results. The results will lead to habits, and habits will ultimately be mastered. See, for 20 years as an industry, what habit have we mastered? We've mastered the habit of not having people sign buyer agency agreements and getting screwed over by buyers every once in a while. And we complain about it, but not a lot, because it works most of the time. Because most of the people don't screw you over. But a lot of people that we show a lot of property to don't buy anything either. But when the marketplace is in the middle, it doesn't matter. It's okay. I got time. Y'all don't have time right now, do you? Stressful. Most stressful real estate market I've ever seen. You don't have time to be messing with people that aren't going to do anything. You don't have time to mess with people that aren't going to be loyal. Hell, you never had time to mess with people. Go be home. Go out on the lake. Go play golf. Do something. Instead of hanging out with somebody you discover halfway through you don't really like, but you don't know how to back out. Or it's like, well, they were referred to me, so I had to work with them. No, you didn't. You don't have to work with people you don't want to work with. But it's this is what gets you there. The hidden benefit of internalized dialogue is you become a great listener. And until your dialogue is internalized, I will guarantee you, you are not a great listener. Because when you get in a stressful environment and your dialogue is not internalized while the other people are talking, you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the next thing I ought to say? It's just not rote for you. It's the biggest thing. Always remember, you're not going to be the only person that they've talked to. They have talked to other agents, especially in this scenario. They've rarely had a buyer agency agreement meeting or a buyer consultation with someone. I listen to it all the time on Zillow calls with these teams that I work with. Zillow is telling people, just set the appointment. That's what the consumer wants. Well, that's what Zillow wants, right? So, because they want people to continue to go to them. And my attitude is, I don't give a damn what Zillow wants. Don't start out with setting the appointment, because here's what happens with these phone calls. Agents are like, yep, I'd like to see this house. Well, when would you like to see it? Well, I'd like to see it today at 4. Okay, well, let me go ahead. I'll go ahead while we're talking and set that appointment up for you. And then they start trying to ask them the qualifying questions. Uh-oh, you've already set the appointment. What's that dialogue? Well, there's dialogue for it, but they're just not very good at it. So then the mantra becomes, Wayne, you don't understand. I'm just better face to face. No, you're not. It just feels more like work when you get to go show a piece of property. I'm all about getting your time back. Okay? I think there's 3 kinds of time, right? Prep time, play time, pay time. I think we all want very vibrant play time, a lot of it. That's why we do it, especially you guys here, Humany Christmas, right? I want to play a lot of golf. It's my deal. I'm getting old. I'm running out of years where I can play a lot of golf. Handle the conversation effectively. You got to understand it's a give and take. It's not a dissertation, it's a conversation. When a buyer asks a question, answer it. But the thing you have to learn and practice is always follow up with a question of your own. It's not natural, I will tell you. It's not natural to always follow up with a question of your own. That's the skill set that you have to really work on. I listen to it on all these calls all the time, that the buyer ends up controlling the conversation and asking all these questions, and the agent is answering them. And the problem is, a lot of times it works, it's fine. But the great conversations are being led by the client, not by the agent, and it's simply because we haven't practiced a dialogue. Never have a conversation without a questionnaire in front of you. Have them with you all the time. It will help you, I promise you. It's just crib sheet questions. It's just so that the conversations don't have these long, weird silences in them, because that's what happens. That's what the consumer expects. That's what they're used to. That's what they've had with 15 or 20 other agents. If you have that same conversation, or lack thereof, you're just like all the rest of them. You've now been painted with the realtor brush. It's going to be all about fee. I'm not going to sign up with you. I've done this realtor thing before. They don't like us anyway, let's be honest. Right? I mean, no, I think you just have to define that for most people, it's like, oh, damn realtors. Utilizing the appropriate questionnaire, start the conversation. 4-step qualification process. You got to work these into every conversation. Number 1, you got a desire to do anything? Do you have a desire? Talk to me about your desire to buy a house. What's your game plan? If you had a magic wand, where would the house be? I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go in this conversation. Write down the magic wand question. Start using that one if you haven't already. I learned this one from Dennis Curtin. If you had a magic wand, what would you do? Well, if I had a magic wand, I'd do this. All right, well, let's talk about how we might be able to do that. Number 2, do they have the ability? Do you have the ability to do what you desire? Yeah, I believe I can. Okay, awesome. Follow-up question is what? Are you paying cash or getting a loan? Not, are you pre-approved? Wrong question. Paying cash or getting a loan, same question said differently, works. Are you pre-qualified? Doesn't work. Why? Everybody else they've talked to says, are you pre-qualified? By the way, and it's also one of the very first questions. Don't make it one of the first questions. Okay? Now, after you find out that they're qualified, now granted, you got second home people, right? But the next thing is we got to figure out, is there something that has to happen before you can purchase? Meaning, is there a lease that has to be completed, or is there a property that has to sell? Because there's a lot of people that have the desire and they have the ability once I get rid of the thing I've already got. Which then leads us at some point into this other conversation. Has anybody talked to you about that? A lot of people, and I don't know if y'all are running into this or not, but a lot of people, when you effectively go down this qualification route, you will hear them say, no, we haven't started anything yet. We want to find the house first before we call our lender. Well, that's now we're into education time, right? Okay, hang on. Let me lay out a few things for you, right? The things that we all know is like, hey, slugger, you got to go do that first before you can get this done. That's the message. The delivery of that is much softer, right? And I brought this guy, I bring this guy's name up all the time. I just listened to one of his calls this week. This guy's name's Donnie Woodard. He's in Brian Woodward's office in Oklahoma. He's been in the business now 16 months. He's closed 27 transactions and has 6 more under contract. It's all online. It's all online stuff. And he is the farthest thing from a silver-tongued devil. I mean, the cadence of his voice, it's not that whippy. But the questions he asks and the way and the order in which he asks them is spot on, like we've taught. And he's converting people. I just listened to a call the other day, and he asked a question. He said, by the way, what's your financing? Will you be paying cash or getting a loan? She said, oh no, we have to get a loan. Have you started that process yet? No, we want to find the house first. He's like, okay, hang on. I hear that a lot from people. Is this your first home that you'll be buying? Well, yeah. Can I take a couple of minutes and kind of explain the marketplace to you and what the process is right now? And she goes, would you? He goes, absolutely. And he explains it to her. She goes, so really that was the first thing I need to do, isn't it? He goes, yeah, it is. He goes, and do you have somebody you'll be using? No. How about I send you names of a couple of people that we use a lot? They're great people. That would be fabulous. Could I follow up with you after you do that? Please do. Here's a person that had a sincere desire. We're not sure if they have the ability yet, but the rest of this doesn't matter until we get that on the table. And like I said, if you, I put some voice inflection in there. Donnie's like, well, you got a couple minutes. Let me tell you how this works, right? But it's the quality of the questions. It's the quality of the comments that's so much better than what people are running into. Next, would you like some help? Because a lot of people don't want help. A lot of people don't want help on the listing side either. Would you like some help? By the way, could I interview to help you? And that's how you get into a buyer consultation. I would just ask for an interview, that's all. When y'all come to town, I would just ask for an interview. Right? If they're coming from wherever, right? I would just ask for an interview. Would there be a chance I could interview? No. Okay. Oh, by the way, big, huge question that's so stupidly simple, but it works so many times. Really, why? Learn to just say why a lot. How come? I just don't understand. Play dumb. I always called it playing dumb, and then one of my clients started calling it being genuinely curious. I'm like, well, that sounds better than playing dumb, right? But seriously, playing dumb is a fabulous strategy. Just like, whoa, how come? How come I can't interview? Are you not going to interview people? Or how come you don't want help? No, I'm going to call the listing agents every time. Really? How come? Oh, because I think I'll get a better deal. Do you have just a second? You do realize that the listing agent is duty bound by contract to get the seller the most money they can? A lot of people start out that way, but then when we sit down and talk about it, they realize it's probably better if they have somebody representing them. Is there any chance I could interview? No. Okay, thanks. Have a nice day. Keep calling listing agents. Good luck to you. Right? If you get 4 yeses, you got a lead. Anything less than 4 yeses, you ain't got a lead. Move on. I think what we're going to see happen, although they're not really tracking the data because it's not good for selling realtor stuff. I think what we're going to find is that, especially in the online world, it is a cherry picking deal. Just statistically, everybody's like, oh, they're just cherry picking the leads. I'm like, nah, maybe it's just a cherry picking thing. If statistically 94% of all online leads are bad, it's kind of a cherry picking thing, right? So I would say just move on. If you can't get to 4 yeses, move on. But if you can't get to 4 yeses and somebody else is getting to 4 yeses, you better find out what they're saying. You better learn about voice inflection and all this stuff. You better go back and hit a ball off a tee. And this is my rallying cry. This is going to happen. This is happening to this industry, and the industry, I swear to God, doesn't feel it. And I just talk to people all over the country, and it's happening everywhere. I have this weird thing that happens. So I have all these, I'm on the phone, I'm on Zoom like 25 hours a week now. Woo! Which I have discovered Zoom is better than just talking to somebody on the phone. I actually enjoy it more. There's never a theme for the week with my brokerage clients. I don't walk in and go, here's our agenda for this week. There's always a theme for the week. Because what I've realized is what's happening in one part of the country is happening all across the country that week. It's the strangest damn thing I've ever seen. And I've learned it just over the last couple of months. It's like, oh, we got this happening, and now I got this happening. I'm like, wow, same guy. So then I'm like, this is interesting. And what's happening right now is, in every real estate office, people that are seasoned veterans, mid-range producers, a lot of them are going, what happened? Everybody's running around saying how they're making all this money. I'm not, what's going on? That's how I went down the past client route, right? This is happening to the industry behind the scenes, and you're not feeling it yet. And by the time you feel it, it's gonna be too late. And you're not gonna be able to turn your ship fast enough. Start now. If you've been through as many cycles as some of us in this room have, the damn things sneak up on us almost every time. There was a huge cycle that happened late 90s. Is that right? Yeah, late 90s, mid to late 90s. It took me 3 months to figure out the marketplace really was slowing down. It took me another 3 months to admit it and 3 more months to do something about it. Because I wasn't good at tracking numbers like I am now and watching patterns play out. And by the time I had to make moves, I had to make these reactionary moves. I had to start cutting stuff. Become a student of the game, please. Become a student of the dialogue game, as far as what we're talking about today. Book an appointment for a consultation if you get 4 yeses. I just want to sit down and chat with you. Now, your key to being able to get that appointment to hold, right, is with the appropriate materials for the situation. Is that once you've booked the appointment with someone, and you're willing to stay in this conversation as long as it takes to book that appointment, then you've got to follow that appointment up with materials, to me. Okay? This is where a thanks for the meeting video. Thanks for setting up a meeting with me. Just a really quick little video shot on your phone. You do not have to shoot a new one every time. Just shoot one. and make sure it's generic enough you can use it. We just got off the phone. I just want you to be able to put a name with a face. I so look forward to meeting with you. Right? That, I mean, once again, we talked about this last time. How many of you started doing videos? Okay, 3 or 4 people. All right? Nobody's doing this. They're still using the same model we've always used. If it was over the phone and you're mailing materials, you've seen this before. I'm not going to go through the video because there won't be any sound. Did anybody pull the trigger on trying to buy these guys? The video cards yet? Abby, I know you reached out about them. I would do it if I were you. They had a deal, Jeff, at BOC about them, right? But they were my understanding was they were preloaded with like generic Remax stuff.
That was just the demo, and it was just, I think that was the demo, and it was designed to sell more cars. And we looked into it for pricing, but we didn't do anything yet.
What was the pricing on it?
20, mid-20s, early. It was expensive. 20 to 25 bucks.
20, 25 bucks a piece.
But we had talked that you could find them maybe for 15.
Find them in China.
You can get them in China for like 14, 15. Yeah. I think you ought to pull the trigger on it and buy some of them. I just know for Carl, and I'll just click through it fast so you don't have to watch it, but there's no sounds. Well, damn it.
Where are you seeing most of those used?
Carl's the only guy I know using them.
And how does he use it for?
So he uses them for recruiting, right? And he uses them, so this is actually his recruiting materials. If he books an appointment with you to come in and talk to him about his company, right, you're going to get a FedEx package the next day at your house. And that FedEx package will have a Y Remax just stock thing. It'll have a $10 Starbucks. It'll have a handwritten note from Carl, and it'll have a video card in it. And when you open up the video card, this is well, you can't hear it, but basically he says, I look forward to meeting with you. Hopefully you can tell by opening this card, I'm not like the normal broker. This is going to be great. I look forward to meeting with you tomorrow. And he's using it just as a way to make appointments hold. Because what we figured out in the recruiting world was agents would set appointments and then cancel. But if you send them something, there's a thing called the law of reciprocity. And if you invoke the law of reciprocity, it simply says, if you send me something of value, I feel this weird subconscious, I kind of have to show up. He got a $10 million producer a couple of months ago strictly off this. She said, I was going to call and cancel. And she said, and then I got that packet from you. And I didn't feel like I could cancel. I think you can invoke exactly the same thing with your clients. And I wouldn't make it to where like the video card has to be a piece. That's kind of really knocking it out of the park. But I think if you bought 100 of those, even at $28 a piece, $2,800, and you got 100 video cards FedEx to people's houses along with your materials, I gotta believe you'd convert some of these people. Right? And I think your return would actually be fantastic. But I admit, it's pretty pricey. What's the result or the desired result of a consultation? Well, it's simply a buyer agency agreement. Again, to me, this is exactly like when you go on a listing presentation. No agreement, no sign. No agreement, I don't get to do my cool stuff for you. You've heard me talk about Chucky before. He lives down in Georgia now. He's retired. And he goes, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I got 10 years. I know how much money I want to make. I got 10 years to do it, and then I'm quitting. And he quit. He had the ability to quit in 4 years because he'd made the amount of money that he'd given himself 10 to make. He would not. You would not get in his car without a buyer agency agreement. He would not show you a piece of property unless you met with him. Now, if you want to have confidence in your ability to flip this around and have it be a value proposition for your sellers as well, in your listing presentations, make a big case out of the fact that I guarantee you I will not show your property to someone that's not qualified. I cannot make that promise on behalf of the industry, but I will promise you that I or my team will never show your property to somebody that's not qualified. Is that okay? And the seller will go, absolutely. Why would I want people that aren't qualified coming through here? Because then when buyers call you and say, well, I need you to come into the office, we have just to meet each other, have a consultation. No, I just want to see the house. Well, are you paying cash or getting a loan? We've got that all worked out. Well, talk to me about that. No, that's none of your business. I don't know, did you get that? Okay. I can't show it to you. Why not? I guaranteed my seller I wouldn't show it to somebody that's not qualified, and quite honestly, I can't tell whether you are or you're not. Well, by God, I'll find somebody that'll show it to me. I'm sure you will. It just ain't gonna be me. I have a process I use with everybody, and you're not wanting to play along, and that's cool. You got your process, I've got mine. We're not a match. Have a nice day. Well, this became Chuck's mentality, because I said, this is how you have to do this. And so he developed this dialogue in a buyer deal, and when he got to the agreement, people would go, I'm not signing that. Chuck goes, I totally understand. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. We're done, because I only work with people that sign an agreement with me. Well, I'm not signing one of those. I totally understand. But let me tell you one thing. You need somebody to represent you. So please go find someone that you trust that can represent you in your purchase, because this is a big deal. It's not going to be me, and I'm cool with that. But please go find somebody, because you need somebody in your corner. And thank you so much for coming in. And he would literally walk them to the door. And I'm not going to tell you all of them would, but over half. He said, he said, I always look out the window. There they are, sitting in the car. He goes, about half of them will come back in and go, okay, we need to do this, because you're different. He did the same thing with for sale by owners. He made his living on for sale by owners. He got referrals from for sale by owners that never used him, who sold their house themselves, because they're like, if you're going to hire an agent, call this guy. He's different. He's not like all of them. Just understand that the initial brush is all of them. It's all those 8,000 people that have joined your board this year, whatever that number is. All right. As we go through the process today, I'd like to ask you some questions about your goals and the home buying experience. Have you ever been through this process before? Have you ever bought a house before? Look, guys, these are my standard questions, so we'll go through them pretty quick. If you've been around me at all, you've heard these questions 1,000 times. They come from the book Top Grading, one of the best books I've ever read. They're expectation questions. They're process questions. Have you ever done this before? Good experience or bad? Talk to me about every house you've ever purchased. Was it a good experience or bad? How did you find the house? Did you use an agent? Dig in and figure out where their head is. Always go 3 deep. Whenever I ask you a question, you give me an answer. It's probably really not the answer. It's probably a script. Be willing to dig deeper every time. Just be willing to slow down. It's a key delivery point, key service delivery point in real estate. Just slow down. Just have a great conversation with me. Do you think buying a house is easy or hard? Do you think there's a lot or a little negotiation that goes on? How many properties do you think you'll need to look at before you buy one? Because they have a process in their head, and it's really good if you know what it is. Because what if somebody says, well, here's the deal. I hear real estate's slowing down, so I'm starting to look for a good deal again. Well, how many do you think you need to look at? Well, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be the one. Well, last time when you bought a house, how many did you look at? Well, how many was it, honey? Oh, I don't know, 40 or 50 probably over about 2.5 years. I'm just saying it's in the room. It's a hell of a lot easier if you know what's going on in their head. Because selling real estate is a battle of processes. And if I can't get you into my process, and my process doesn't mirror your, we should probably get away from each other, right? It's like people that go, I never show people more than 5 houses. Well, it doesn't always work, but it works with people whose process is, I don't need to look at more than 5. I'm hiring you to not make me look at more than 5 or whatever, because that's my process. What are your thoughts on the current marketplace? Ask them, what are you guys thinking? What have you heard? What have you read? Where do you think we are? After you've explored their answers, explain the reality of the marketplace. This thing's really fast. Are you okay with that? You're not going to have a lot of time to sleep on it, pray about it, whatever. And even today, right, from what Jeff said, we don't have 10 offers, we only have 3, but it's still got a tremendous amount of speed to it. We're not going to have tons of houses to look at. I'm sorry. Are you okay with that? You must have your financing secured because no seller will look at an offer that's not. And then we've got to be incredibly rock solid. You have to even do things now that you didn't have to do before because no one will look at one of your offers. We're probably or possibly going to get in a multiple offer situation. Are you okay with that? It's happening a lot. If you had stats to back this up, I don't even know if they track those stats, right? But if we have stats say, look, in our marketplace, X number of properties have multiple offers. Are you okay with it? And it's all this, everything's followed with, are you okay with that? Because these are the rules. In today's market, these are the rules. Are you okay with that? Do you still want to play? And if you want to play, I got strategies for you, but you have to decide you want to play in this market. And if you don't want to participate, man, I understand. We might get in a bidding war. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's happening a lot. Obviously, when you get multiple offers, you get in a bidding war. Oh, I would never get in a bidding war. Probably ought to take a break then. You might pay over asking price. You okay with that? Nope. Not going to do that. Would never pay over asking price for anything. In fact, I'm planning on hitting everybody about 15% below what they're asking, regardless of what they're asking. That would have been my father. Yeah. Swear to God, that was my dad. He's like, I don't care what anybody's asking for anything. His famous line was, I'm starting at their shin, and I'm going to try to buy it at about their kneecap. He said, but it'll be cash. And he was able to get stuff done. Hey, my dad was, I could do a whole deal about my father. He was brilliant. He really was. He was a really cool cat. He, one time, he was the opposite thing when he was selling. So he never wanted to buy a house my dad had that he lived in because you were going to pay too much. He always built these really cool houses for himself, and then he would always sell anything. Mom and Dad moved like 38 times while they were married. He put the word out in Springfield that he would sell his house. And he got a phone call from the guy that owned all the McDonald's in town who was getting married to his new wife, and all this plays into the story. And the new wife called my dad and said, I understand you would sell your house. And Dad said, yeah, I'll sell it. Well, what's the price? And Dad said, $575,000, which was just like, this is 1980. I mean, this is like it'd be like $3 million in Springfield now. She said, Joe and I would like to come take a look. And Dad said, that's fine. Well, my mom didn't really want to move, but she liked this one. It was all cars, this one was really cool. And so they come and look at it, and the new wife-to-be looks at my mom and says, Peggy, what are the utility bills on this house? And my mother, being my mother, said, well, if you need to worry about the utility bills, you don't need to be looking at this house. Because she didn't want to move. And the buyer guy, McDonald's guy, said, Peggy, I agree with you. And my mom was like, damn it, that didn't work. So then Dad gets a letter, and they mentioned during the meeting, Joe Post was the man. I mentioned his name, he's passed away now. And he mentioned in the meeting that he owned a lot at Hickory Hills Country Club. He already owned it. And so Dad gets this letter in the mail from Post. This is my favorite real estate story of all time. He gets this letter in the mail from Post that says, Jack, thanks so much for letting Sue and I look at your house. Oh, I'm mentioning names you probably know. Yeah, Sue Tarvestad was the lady. And he said, so this letter serves as an offer of $485,000 for your house. Now, I know you're not going to take that, and that's fine. But then Sue and I are just going to go build at Hickory. But I thought just, on a one-off chance, you might take it. So I'm writing you the letter. So my dad calls me. Now I'm fresh out of real estate school, right? 1985, I'm 23 years old. My dad calls me and he goes, hey, listen to this. I just got this letter from Post. And his letter says he'll give me $485,000 for the house cash. And he goes, I'm going to counter him. He goes, I really only wanted $500 anyway. I go, Dad, read the letter again. He didn't mean to buy this house. He's trying to pacify Sue. So I go read the letter again. He goes, you're right. I go, Dad, you always taught me once you got close in a deal, you need to leave a little for the next guy. $485 to $500 is $15,000. Ain't worth screwing with. Tell him you'll take it. He goes, well, what do you mean? I go, just got out of real estate school. That's an offer. I think if you send him a certified letter that says you accept it, that's a contract. And he goes, I'll call you back. So he calls Sam Dickey, who was an attorney, and he goes, nope, Wayne's right. That would be a contract. You want me to draft a letter? And Dad goes, yep. Sends Post a letter back, certified mail. I hereby accept your offer of $485,000. Post calls him. Jack, we got to talk. Dad goes, about what? He goes, about you buying my house. He said, according to my attorney, you just bought it. We just got to figure out when we're going to close. He's like, Jack, you don't understand. We met at Village Inn. So we got to go to the Village Inn and talk. Dad's like, well, talk, but you're buying my house, Joe. And he did. I don't know why I told that story either, but that's how I roll, right? Oh, paying over asking price. Joe, obviously, right? So, but it's always framed with, are you okay with that? Because there's rules in every marketplace, and the rules move fluidly, but there's always rules to the market. Sometimes you have a lot of leverage as a buyer, sometimes you don't. It's our job to have strategies given the way the marketplace is. If you would, please define your perfect house for me in detail. Tell me exactly what it is that you're looking for in a house. Write down all their answers. This could take as long as it wants to, right? As long as it needs to. What are you looking for? If you had a magic wand, what would this house be? Go 3 deep until you're crystal clear on exactly what they're looking for. Been my experience at the end of our meeting, 1 of 3 things will happen. You choose me to represent you in the purchase, that would be fabulous. You choose someone else, not so great. Thirdly, I may be unable to represent you. What is the one thing that would happen where you couldn't represent them? They don't sign a buyer agency with you. That's the one thing that could happen. Why would you be able to represent? As we go through the process, we may come across a need or expectation you have that I can't meet or exceed. If that's the case, I'll tell you today. What's the need or expectation that I have that you're going to hire me to represent you? If we were working together, here's my role in the transaction. And that's to create strategies to put you in control, not only in negotiations, but also to help you find the perfect house. So let me ask you this question seriously. For your buyers, what are your strategies that you use right now? And are they in writing? And do you have promotional materials around them? And do you present them to your buyer clients on the front end? Because if not, you should start. Just exactly as you do a listing presentation. I'm going to mark it here, and we're going to do this, and here's why, all of those things. As we discussed, currently in this market, buyers don't have a lot of control, but I have a game plan to not only help you find the perfect house, but to try to keep you out of a bidding war with other buyers. Is that something that would interest you? Well, if you've asked the first questions, you're probably going to hear, yeah. Because most people kind of know this gig and they're not real happy with the gig. That's why buyers have pulled out of the market, right? Well, based on the information you gave me earlier about your perfect house, I'd like to see if I can get somebody to sell their property that's not on the market, or someone who's thinking of a sale in the next few months. By the way, over 70% of homeowners say they're contemplating a sale. And see if we can't get you in there before it hits the market. Additionally, I'll still be exploring properties in the traditional methods as they come on the market. That, of course, is multi-list. That's the red ocean. Given that you decide to hire me to represent you, here's the process we would be using in addition to traditional MLSs. Direct mail to the neighborhoods that you defined earlier as a place you really want to be. Perhaps we'll go drive together and have you point to the houses that really interest you. I'll contact those sellers and ask if they're contemplating a sale. I'll also canvass other realtors on properties they have coming on the market. I mean, in a sense, for this guy in Lawton, this is what this buyer was. He said, I don't care that there's no houses. What do you got? How are you going to find me one? I've got to do this. And we hear this from people all the time, clients themselves doing this and saying, we decided we wanted to live right here. So we just put together a little letter, said that we want to live right here, and went and put it in everybody's mailbox. Well, I'll be darned if we didn't get 3 phone calls. Here's the letter. You got a copy of it. It's working for people that are actually sending it. Doesn't work every time. I don't want to tell you that. A lot of the properties don't fit. I had somebody call me the other day and said, okay, we've gotten like 5 conversations back. We've had conversations, but the property didn't fit. Now where do we go? I'm like, well, now it's a listing lead. What do you mean, where do you go? It's like, hey, this didn't work for my people, but talk to me about what you're thinking about doing. Did you just respond to the letter on a lark, or were you really thinking about doing this? Yeah, we were really thinking about doing this. Okay. Now we just get straight into the listing dialogue, right? Let me send you some information. Well, I would sell my house, but where would I go? Well, hold on. You know that letter that you got? You want to sit down and let's define this, and I'll send that letter out for you? Well, I'd have to sell my house first. Well, okay, hold on. We can try to work all these things together. Well, what I'm starting to hear from people a lot is lease backs aren't really tripping people's triggers anymore because they're afraid they're never going to be able to find something, right? Or really, 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 really long closings aren't tripping people's triggers. If your buyer approves, include a copy of their pre-approval letter or just say they're cash. I have a cash buyer. Literally, I have a cash buyer, and if you're interested, I will be able to verify funds for you prior to the showing. I mean, really validate the fact that, hey, this isn't like the rest of the letters you've gotten. You'll hear this, do you really have a buyer or are you just trying to get listings? Don't tell them. You'll have your buyer drive by. You go look at it. Because now I'm going to enroll you into that side of the equation. See, part of my problem that I have with the industry right now is we have all of these very pat ways we do the listing side, but the buyer side doesn't even, it's not even close to the same processes. And I think it's the line in the sand, that and past clients. With all the AI that's going on, they are figuring this stuff out with computers. I mean, you can't believe on Zillow calls the number of people, the number of clients or the potential clients that when Alex says, I'm going to transfer you to an agent now, they say, thank you, Alex. Alex is not a person. Alex is AI. But they think he's a person. It's really weird. But I would think he's a person too. Other than I listen to all these and it's the same voice with the same cadence every time. I'm like, I don't think that's a real guy. What do you feel you have the right to expect from me as your real estate agent? Right? So in other words, we're laying out, hey, if you hire me, here's what we'll do. We'll drive around, we'll get really detailed, I'll send some letters out, I'll try to find you what you want. By the way, what do you feel you have the right to expect from me as your agent? What do you feel I have the right to expect from you? This is kind of where we start working the loyalty thing in. Well, I don't know. What would you expect from me? Well, the only thing I really expect from my clients is that we're loyal with each other. Are you okay with that? Oh, what do you mean by that? Well, that's actually that we have a written agreement in place. Oh, I would never sign one of those. How come? And perhaps it's because of their past experiences as they laid out earlier. Right? I mean, you just never know how you're going to end up there, but if you'll ask this line of questioning, you'll end up there. How does somebody win with you? How does somebody lose with you? These are straight out of top grading, basic expectation, relational expectation questions. What's your preferred communication method? On a scale of 1 to 10, how honest you want me to be with you? I love that question. It's awesome. Most people won't pull the trigger on it, but I like it. Okay? And you don't have to, I mean, if you are uncomfortable with this piece of it, that's fine. But I would ask, what do you expect from me and what can I expect from you? I have my own list. There it is. And you'll see on both sides of it, it's to be loyal. I expect you to be loyal. This is the process that Chuck used because he didn't know any better. He started doing it from day one. And it worked. And it worked both ways. It worked to gain buyer loyalty, and it also worked when the buyer said, I'm not signing it. He's like, cool. Because to me, if they don't sign it, what are they really telling you? I reserve the right to screw you over. I had a client tell me not too long ago that it was in a listing situation, and the bottom line was he called 3 realtors out to price the property. And in the conversation, he said, I've never used a realtor. I've always just done this on my own. And they stupidly went ahead and told him what the price was. I said, we told you he wasn't going to use you. Is he for sale by owner in it? Well, yeah. He said, would you have walked out? I said, 100%. You've never used a realtor before, really. But if you don't ask the past experiences questions, you don't know this. I said, what I would have asked about your past experiences, and he would have been forced to say, well, I've never really used a realtor before, I always do it myself. Is that in play here? Well, yeah. So what's going to have to happen for you to hire a realtor this time? That's going 3 deep, right? Because this is all what's going through my head. And he would have probably said, well, I'm not going to hire a realtor. Okay, so hold on. So why am I here? Well, I just need to know what it's worth. Wow. So let me get this straight. So you've told me I'm competing against 2 other realtors to help you tell you what your house is worth, and then you're not going to hire any of us? She goes, would you have really said that to him? I go, oh, 100%. With that kind of weird, inquisitive voice inflection, though. It's like, wow, really? She goes, well, then what would you have said? If he would have said, yeah, that's what I did, I would have said, good luck. But what's my house worth? I don't know. Good luck. He ended up for sale by owner at their prices. I don't know whether they got it sold or not, right? But I think you got, look, as Jim Good taught me years ago, the goal of any conversation, incoming, outgoing, or goal of any contact is to identify a potential client. Not try to turn people into clients, not to remake yourself every time into what you think they want. Identify a potential client. Here's how I do it. Here's my process. Do you want to play with me or not? Or you want to go play with somebody else? Or do you want to play alone? Or are you even going to play at all? And you were just bored today. Because that happens too, right? I'd love to work with you to find your perfect home. I only ask one thing in return. You commit to working exclusively with me. Is that fair? No, that's not fair. Really? Why not? I don't understand. I can guarantee you the best service in the industry if you can guarantee me your loyalty. What do you say? Here's a buyer agency agreement. Let me walk through it with you. It says this: you can't buy a house without me. You can't look at houses without me. My fee is going to be that which is offered by the listing company, but under no circumstances will be less than 3.5%. So that means that if I show you a house and they're only offering 2.5%, we will have to have the conversation of where the other 1% is going to come from. By the way, I also charge a $1,000 retainer up front, fully credited when you buy. Shouldn't be a problem, because based on what we said earlier, I know you're going to buy one really quick. I just want to make sure that we're not wasting our time. See, I believe as a team leader, you could mandate that your buyer agents do that, and they'd have to figure out the dialogue. Do what? They require. Thank you, sorry, my bad. Anyway, but we don't have, see, the deal is we don't have to do it. And so we don't. And my core belief is very simply this. The reason it's not mandated, even though everybody in this room would like to see fewer realtors and we'd like to get back down to however many in the market, the industry in and of itself does not want that. They talk a great game of code of ethics and professionalism and all this BS. They don't want it. Because at the local level, the state level, and the national level, we are a dues-funded organization. So they talk a game all day long. They don't want a few people really good at this because they're going to lose their very high-paying jobs in some cases. I don't know that Lawrence Yune's worth $1.2 million a year for the stats he throws out every quarter. He's our chief economist at NAR. I'm kind of an anti-NAR guy right now. I'm not anti-NAR. I'm just like, what are y'all doing? The industry's changing dramatically, and y'all are knitting. We're having mouse races, and So anyway, there you go. There's my NAR comment. Remember, the goal of any contact, as I just said, is to identify a potential client. And great scripting only works with people who are actually going to do something. Biggest thing is internalize your dialogue. I've been saying this to people for years. And the reality is we all have internalized dialogue. The question is it getting you the desired result? We all have internalized dialogue. And if you don't think so, just start recording yourself all the time, because now you know it's legal in Missouri. So you can't give me that, I would never want to record a conversation that I was having. Oh, it's legal. You can't use that excuse anymore. Seriously, record yourself talking in your listing presentations and buyer presentations. You will learn so much about what you are actually saying that you don't realize. You'll be like me, like I realize I chase weird rabbits that pop into my head. I just do. You got to have great materials, guys, more so than ever before, because the AI people. One other thing that Tammy and I talked about earlier, on this charging somebody $1,000 up front. The iBuyer program has validated the fact that these people don't care what the fees are. Are you familiar with iBuyer at all? Like if you read about it and dig into it, it's just they sell it on a convenience factor rather than going through people traipsing through your house, having to deal with real estate agents and all that stuff. Just let us buy your house. We'll write you a check. We'll pay you cash. There will be a bit of a discount. There will be some fees, by the way, which equate to way more than a realtor fee. But there's the convenience factor of it. And so what we're learning from these guys is it's not about the fee. They're going after the people who want the convenience factor. By the way, their back end is for the people that don't want the convenience factor. What have they done? They've generated a seller lead. Someone that wants to sell their house but doesn't want the convenience factor. And then what do they turn around and do with that? They sell it to you. There's a big old game going on, folks. Get in the middle of it. Provide strategies for your clients. Take people through your process and don't become part of theirs, because that'll wear your butt out in this business. Control your life. Turn pro. Seriously. Turn pro. And if you're already a pro, just become a better pro. Become a bigger pro. So, one last rabbit if I can pull it up real quick. Habits and qualities that the professional possesses that the amateur doesn't. This is right out of Pressfield's book. Number 1, the professional shows up every day. Number 2, the professional stays on the job all day. Number 3, the professional is committed over the long haul. For the professional, the stakes are high and real. Further, the professional is patient. They seek order. They demystify. The professional acts in the face of fear. The professional accepts no excuses. The professional plays it as it lays. The professional is prepared. The professional does not show off. The professional dedicates himself to mastering technique. The professional does not hesitate to ask for help. The professional does not take failure or success personally. The professional does not identify with his or her instrument. The professional endures adversity. The professional self-validates. The professional reinvents herself. And the professional is recognized by other professionals. Y'all are professionals. Just this is my warning cry in this market where we're heading because of the money being played. You got to get up there. You got to raise your bar. You got to be elite. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.